My name's Simone Clinch-Moore. I am a Badimia Yamatji woman, born and raised on Wajak Noongar here in Boorloo or Perth. I am the General Manager of Programs, AOD, Justice and Housing and Homelessness at Wungening Aboriginal Corporation. Look, firstly, I just want to thank the Justice Health Network for the opportunity to present some of Wungening's justice programs to you today. And I would also like to start by giving an acknowledgement. Ngalla Wirrin Wunging Kian Karach Nijabuja. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we're meeting on today, particularly the Wajak people of the Noongar Nation, on which land I am, and pay my respects to elders past and present. And I too will extend that to Aboriginal people joining us in this webinar today. So I'm going to start by giving a little bit of an overview of Wungening Aboriginal Corporation and what we do here. So Wungening is an Aboriginal community controlled organisation established roughly 35 years ago. Where a group of 40 local Aboriginal people kind of came together to address the lack of culturally appropriate AOD services in our community. And from this meeting, Noongar Alcohol and Substance Abuse Service, or NASAS as it was known, was born. And through the years, we've undergone a few name changes to better reflect the services that we provide, and obviously the community that we serve. Here at Wungening, so AOD is our core business and is at the heart of all we do. However, in recent years, we've expanded to include other services, including justice, child protection, FDV, housing and homelessness, and most recently out of home care. Our cultural framework acts as a guide for all Wungening staff and for the people that we work with. Our culturally competent mindset is driven by 5 core principles. They are Aboriginal empowerment. So, we embed inclusiveness and a people-first approach, acknowledging Aboriginal people are the owners of their own future. Self-determination. We support the right to self-determination of Aboriginal people's families and communities to determine their own future and solve their own problems. Truth-telling. We strive to be responsive to our staff and clients' needs through flexibility and acknowledging the impact of intergenerational trauma, well-being and identity. Cultural respect. We treat staff and clients with respect and understanding of their place in the world. We respect the importance of consultation processes with appropriate cultural authorities. Ongoing learning. We are committed to ongoing learning about culture and history. We challenge internal conscious and unconscious biases. We work from a place of cultural safety and embed a sense of belonging for all involved. So Wungening actually have a number of justice programs. We're going to focus on ReSet today. However, we, in partnership with external agencies, which we call our alliance programs, deliver services in the justice field. These programs are led by the external agencies and include Palmerston Association and Centrecare. All of these programs consist of an integrated team, which are led by our partner agencies, and they include Solid Steps, Connect Wonju, and Beyond Youth Justice. And I'll give you a quick overview of each of those programs. So Solid Steps is an AOD program and delivered in partnership with Palmerston Association. This is a program that is based in Casuarina Prison, which is our maximum security prison here in Perth, where we provide AOD support to 128 men who are incarcerated across the metro and regional prisons. So this is a unit, it's called the Ngalla unit, and it is segregated from the general population at Casuarina. Participants, it's a voluntary participation, and the program runs, the individuals are able to access the program roughly 12 to 18 months pre-release. So the program applies a therapeutic community. So it's a TC essentially. And the principles are kind of modified for the environment and the context. So activities can include group programs, mutual aid and peer support, one-on-one support. It also includes like assisted connection activities, so family visits and support, reintegration support where applicable, and there's also, I guess, a post-release support that can be offered as well, including active community participation. Connect Wunju is our next program. This program is also delivered in partnership with Palmerston Association. This program aims to improve access to treatment and support services for individuals that are currently going through the court system. This program provides support through case management over roughly a 12-week period, and is aimed to address clients' concerns with physical and mental health, AOD, socioeconomic needs, and homelessness. Beyond Youth Justice is actually our first justice program we've ever delivered, and this is in partnership with Centrecare. This service provides young people who are engaged with youth justice services support and assistance in areas around like rehabilitation and emotional well-being. It's a community-based support, and we also deliver workshops and programs at Banksia Hill. So this is, again, as mentioned, a partnership with Centrecare, who also partner with us in our ReSet program. So that's just a little bit about our alliance programs. And I did mention earlier, but alliance, so they are led by external agencies. They hold the contract for those programs. However, Wungening delivers the service in partnership with them. What I'd like to do now is hand over to Mauneek, and he's going to speak about our ReSet program. Thank you.
Thanks, Simone. Yeah, look, my name is Mauneek. I am the manager for the ReSet program. ReSet is the contracted reintegration service provider for the metropolitan area in WA. We are in partnership with Centrecare and Wallage. Wallage was previously known as Wirrin Foundation, for those that don't know. They mainly provide employment support for clients coming out of prison. The ReSet program is led by Wungening, but obviously in partnership with Centrecare and Wallage as well. So over the next few slides, I'm just going to take you through the different services that ReSet offers, both pre-release and post-release, because there's a number of different services that are available to prisoners as well. You know, the main sort of service area for us would be the re-entry support. So we start working with clients 6 months pre-release and up to 12 months once they get out of prison. We work with a range of clients, so from medium to high-risk offenders. This includes perpetrators of domestic violence, perpetrators of sexual violence against women and children as well. The only exclusion to ReSet, I suppose, is clients that are classified dangerous sex offenders. Under the new legislation, the term that they use now is high-risk serious offenders, and that specific contract sits with Uniting WA, so they provide that reintegration support for dangerous sex offenders, I suppose. So yeah, look, we start working with people 6 months pre-release, identify what their needs are in the community, and majority of the times, housing is identified as a major need for transitional support, and that is one of our biggest challenges in terms of finding that housing support for clients. The other sort of supports we provide clients through re-entry is that employment. We link clients up with employment services through Knowledge. Connection to culture is big for us, being an Aboriginal corporation, and as you know, there is an increased or higher incarceration rate of Aboriginal people in prison, and it's important that we have that connection to culture and have Aboriginal specifics programs in prison as well. Another big one for us is release day support. A lot of clients that are incarcerated might not necessarily have people that can pick them up on their day of release. And this simply looks like, picking them up on the day, taking them to the bank, taking them to Centrelink, make sure that all the services set up for them when they get out of prison. Sometimes we'll give them a phone as well so that we can reach out to them or they can reach out to us as well. The other one is regional transfers. If a client comes out of prison and wants to move to Albany, then we'll link them up with Pivot and other services as well. In Bunbury, got a Code West and other areas as well. And vice versa, if there's clients coming from regional areas, they'll be referred to us as well. So the next one is family centers. So ReSet operates family centers outside of 4 prisons in metro area. These family centers predominantly look at facilitating social visits, but they become a lot more than that. There's a lot of advocacy and support that happens at the family centers. A lot of the families are coming in, they're first-time visitors inside the prison. They don't know the ins and outs. So the family center staff and program Wungening are able to guide them through that process. There's a lot of debriefing that happens after, because a lot of times the family members are coming out quite emotional, quite upset after hearing something. If someone didn't get parole, if there was something, or they've been added new charges, then the families come out, and the first point of contact would be our staff in the family centers, and then we're providing that kind of just debriefing and support for them. Through the family centers, we also provide onward referrals. So it's not just for clients that are inside prison, but the families as well, because we recognize that there is a connection there. If the family is being looked after and supported, then the person that comes into the community will find that stability as well. So we look at onward referrals for the families in terms of the AOD space, financial counseling, linking up with mental health services and AOD services as well. The family center staff also go inside the prison and do a lot of the children's activities if it's during Christmas period. So the family centers, the other thing to know is we operate 7 days a week and 365 days a year. We only shut 1 day of the year, which is I think it's Christmas Day. But the rest of the days we're open and we are providing support to families. So even on public holidays, on Father's Day, we take activities inside so that the parents can share with the children as well. So yeah, that's a bit about the family centers, and they're across Casuarina Prison. We've got one in Bandia, we've got one in Boorloo, and the other one is in Heikia Prison as well. The next one is parenting programs. So ReSet has a contract for providing some parenting supports inside prison. So we have a range of parenting programs that we deliver inside all prisons in metropolitan WA. Some of these are quite structured programs. They're video-based programs. The other ones have a bit of a cultural connection to it. So you can see in there Kadich Kalak and Mujit Mod, which we're looking at, the Aboriginal way of healing, the cultural connection, and Aboriginal ways of parenting as well. So we bring that into the prisons. These programs are delivered across all prisons, and usually it's available to all prisoners. Previously, it was only sentenced prisoners, but we've opened all these programs to people on remand as well. Outside of this, the support workers also provide the one-on-one parenting. So if someone's not comfortable attending groups, then there is an option for them to attend like the one-on-one parenting support through, and all these referrals come through the transitional managers in prison. One of the main key sort of support and connections we're trying to do is making sure that parents have the skills and strategies to better connect with the kids. Even when they're released or while they're incarcerated, how to better support the families on the outside as well. And we get some really, really good feedback about, parenting strategies and parents that didn't know, what to do in the past. So, the other program that we deliver is an AOD brief intervention. Simone spoke about the Mali unit, which is quite structured, very clinical, and a 6-month long program. However, there was an identified gap. People that were on remand never really had any courses that they could attend. They would be waiting on remand 12 months, and then when they get sentenced, and then they go into an individual management plan is when they determine what courses will be beneficial for them. In the interim, there is no other courses that's available to them. So we proposed running a 2-day intervention program, especially for people on remand. It was started out at Hakia. This was a couple of years ago, and we've since expanded that across all prisons. So we've got 8 prisons that we're running these programs in. And they're not meant to be clinical or structured program. It's meant to be just a bit of a yarn to introduce you to some strategies about thinking about the impacts of drug use on your daily life. And we incorporate that cultural lens of recovery when we look at the different parts of our lives, we look at the body, the heart, the head, and the family, how all of that interconnects in terms of that healing process and recovery. And that's, again, offered across all prisons. Like I said, it started out as a remand option, but then it's now available to all prisons as well. And look, that's the main sort of areas of support that ReSet provides. I'll give you a bit of a map as to the areas and prisons we cover. So those are the areas. You can look at Carnet is a minimum security prison. You've got Casuarina, which is maximum security. Hakia and Meluka are main remand prisons. We've got Wandu, which is a rehab prison for women. Boronia is another minimum security. Bandia, Acacia, and Boorloo. So you can see we cover quite a range in terms of the prisons and the distance as well. So yeah. Just wanted to give you a bit of a snapshot, a 12-month snapshot of what ReSet has been able to deliver in the last 12 months. So as you can see there, we serviced up to 68,000 through the family centers just in a year. Family centers average about 6,000 to 7,000 visitors every month. They're quite busy. And we tend to see a lot of clients coming through quite upset sometimes, and we're dealing with some heightened emotions and anxiety as well. 82 parenting groups delivered across all the prison. We had 3,722 clients accessing parenting groups across the various prisons. Again, with AOD support, we had up to 2,000 clients that accessed AOD support. We look at the employment side up there where it says 173 clients assisted to secure employment. Now, you might think that's not a huge number, but if you've got to realize the limitations and the barriers of people coming out of prison, accessing employment can be quite challenging, especially given a criminal background. You've got to get a police clearance, you've got parole conditions to abide by. So when we look at 173, that's actually a good outcome in what we look at it, because it's quite challenging for people coming out of prison to access employment. But another 182 clients were also linked up with training and upskilling. So things like forklift tickets, riggers and doggers tickets, working confined spaces, helping them gain their driver's licenses. So things like that we also assisted clients with. And again, like I said, accommodation has been one of our biggest challenges. So over the 12 months, when you look at 90 clients assisted to secure transitional accommodation, it doesn't look like a big number, but everyone's aware of the current housing crisis in WA. There is absolutely not many options available for people coming out of prison, and it's even worse for people that have high risk offences or offences of a sexual nature. There's very few places that will take them on board. ReSet do have a small stock of housing properties, but they're very limited. We only got 19 properties across the entire metro area to support clients with transitional accommodation. As part of financial support and emergency relief, we do provide clients with some vouchers on their release day. We will give them a Coles voucher, a Kmart voucher. We'll give them a release pack where we put in some toiletries in there. We'll put in some new clothes, some shoes, and if accessible, we will also provide a mobile phone as well. This is just to get them set up when they first get out, because a lot of times they don't have access to any funds. Centrelink only provides them half the payment when they first get out. So this is just a little bit to help them in the first few weeks so that they're released. So over the last 12 months, ReSet provided $54,000 worth of emergency relief to clients that were in financial crisis. Now, because this is a health justice webinar, I thought I would include something health specific, in terms of the challenges that we've observed over the time that we've provided these services, and how we think that impacts on reintegration and the reoffending rate. So this is what I think it's been happening. When people are sentenced and they're in custody, there is the lack of appropriate diagnosis and targeted health supports in prisons, which means there's limited health information that's available to support services like ours. They don't provide as much. We don't have access to any of the health information, regardless of us, trying to access that information. Which means there's lack of the through care and mismatched community supports due to undiagnosed health conditions. So the client is released into the community with unmet treatment needs, no supports in place, and we've then linked them up with a support that's not suitable for them. What happens then? The client reoffends because due to the criminalization of certain behavior related to mental illness and health-related issues, and the client is then back in custody. And that cycle just repeats itself, We find that we need some targeted support in prison. There is just now that momentum building where there's NDIS being able to access the prisons, but for a lot of time that's been lacking. So yeah, I think for me, that's what we've observed in the last few years in terms of health-specific challenges, in terms of that reoffending cycle as well, and then how that impacts on reintegration from our end. Every few years, all the prisons are reviewed by an independent inspector, officer inspector of custodial services. They call them OICs. Recently, OICs did a review of Hakea Prison, and the prisoners were asked what their daily life is, and asked for their specific feedback. So I've got a bit of a snapshot in the next slide as to what the prisoners have responded with. So you can see their living conditions, reduced access to showers, clean clothing, and this is the prisoners themselves saying this. This is not something that's been made up. 63% said the unit was poor, and 80% said the laundry was poor. If you do look down at the food section, you can see, you say the food is overcooked, waterlogged, served cold, and was often unhealthy. It was served early, and because of constant lockdowns, sometimes people were eating, after 16 hours, 16 hours without food in prison. That can be a long time. Look at the health services. There were long wait lists to see the nurse, and it took even longer to see the doctor or specialist. And this is what I'm talking about, the lack of appropriate diagnosis and support. These are people they could be on remand, they could be sentenced, and all of a sudden, if they're on remand and they get a backdated sentence, they're released without any sort of health intervention. 8% say the health services were good. This was 23 in 2021. This was at 23%. So rather than going up, we've somehow found a way to go back down in terms of the health services. And look, this is just one specific prison. This is Haycare prison we're talking about, but this is quite current. This was done a few months ago. Short staffing is a huge issue. As a program service delivery, we've only been able to run one prison the entire year, one program the entire year at Haycare prison due to staffing shortages. And you can see that in the feedback, from reintegration, where it says there's only one transition manager for over 1,100 men. It's very difficult to see that person. And we're having issues accessing official visits because of staffing shortages and stuff. And look, that's available for people to view on the OIC's website as well. So if people wanted to have a bit of a further read, it's available there. But look, that's ReSet, pretty much an overview of what ReSet and what services we provide currently. But yeah, look, if there's anyone, I'll leave it open to questions now. If there's anyone that's got questions for myself or Simone, please go for it.
Thank you so much, Simone and Mauneek. That's an amazing overview. And I mean, I've certainly got questions and I see that others do as well. I wonder if you'd mind unsharing screen so we can see people's faces. And I see there's at least a couple of questions in the chat. Would the folks who did that like to just unmute and ask their question or make the observation they had?
Yeah, I can go first. Thanks so much, Mauneek and Simone, for sharing all that. It's really great to see the breadth of things happening. I just had a really quick question around the AOD brief intervention program.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, I put it in the chat, but I'm just wondering if there's any kind of, it didn't seem like the focus was withdrawal management or providing medications like opioid treatment, but maybe more of like situating within like plans for transition and building supports around drug use or potential like resumption of drug use. Did I get that right? I'm just curious what that program looks like in a little bit more detail, if it differs between like young people and adults.
Yeah, so that's mainly targeted at people that have just entered the justice system, or they just come to prison and have had no other programs in terms of intervention. So it's more of an introduction to start thinking about that recovery path and a pathway to more clinical programs. It's about having a casual yarn and inviting people to think about what drug use what impact drug use has had on their lives, and all the facilitators that we use to deliver that program have had training in alcohol and drug intervention as well. So.
Yeah, I guess so. I think I was thinking it was a transitional program. So it's when people are entering prison.
Yeah, this is just for in custody, not in the community.
So okay.
If they came out into the community, through Wungening, they can access the alcohol and drug services that Wungening offers as well.
Do you find many people come in? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Simone.
No, you ask your question because I might be answering it. Sorry.
I was just wondering if you find many people come in that are actively withdrawing and they have been in the community using and then are now in prison. And obviously they don't have accessibility to substances like they would in the community. Is that a challenge that you face, and how would you deal with that? Or maybe it's past that point of time in the withdrawal process.
Yeah, look, to be honest, so Wungening isn't a clinical service, so we don't provide any medical interventions for detoxing at all. We build partnerships with services like Next Step that provide that type of support. However, look, I think it's a big gap. There would probably be a large number of individuals entering into prisons that are withdrawing, and I don't think the support is where it probably should be for those individuals, and I mean medically. So I think it's a rough couple of days once entering the prison system for those individuals. And look, correct me if I'm wrong, Mauneek, you might have more of idea on that.
No, that's absolutely right. Yeah, so that's when they enter prison, usually by the time they're referred for an AOD brief intervention, they've had some medical intervention. The prison might have given them something. They might have had some time to come off the drug. Because usually we get the referrals once they have been in prison for maybe a month or two, and by then they're at the level where they can actually engage with us as well. So.
Gotcha. Thanks for clarifying.
And Rob, I see you had a comment there. I was wondering if you would ask a question along those lines.
Great, thanks, Stuart. Yeah, I'm just wondering if Wungening does extend those services to other regional prisons, or if it's more just a Noongar bachelor concentrated type of service. I mean, we really do need these services in the regional settings as well. And whilst I don't know the exact statistics, it seems as though the further north you go, the higher the percentage of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in prison. So certainly there's a call and a need for these services that you're offering. Thank you.
Yeah. So, look, it's definitely a topic of discussion that we've had, but right now, so currently Wungening is only funded to deliver services in the Perth metro area. And unfortunately, that's across all of our program areas. We're really big on building relationships and supporting smaller ACOs to be able to, move into these spaces to support. So it's definitely a topic of conversation. But as of right now, no, our services are limited to the Perth metro area.
Okay, I understand. I'd be really keen, if it's possible, maybe to have a yarn to someone. And I mean, in Geraldton, for example, we've got the Grams Grid, Geraldton Regional Medical Aboriginal Service, and there's other services around. So I think there'd be, as I said, the need to have these services. And if we could sort of make some sort of an organisation or build some sort of contacts that helps those people as being released from prison, because, I mean, accommodation is such a big issue, and support for AOD services and things like that are really, really missing, I think, or in need for more support, I should say.
Yeah, no, we're definitely open for a conversation, and probably be the best point of contact for you for that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Lindsay.
Sorry, at the risk of taking up too much airspace, I just had a question in the back of my mind that relates to your question, Robin. Full disclosure, it's a very researchy question to ask. But I'm just wondering if Wungening is doing any evaluations of the program implementations or the outcomes among the people involved in the program, because I think that could be really compelling and important evidence to share for other regions to expand some of the programs, or get funding to, if you can demonstrate that it's really effective for improving outcomes, or even just experiences of people. Like you showed some qualitative things just from having conversations with clients that could be really valuable for building the case for expanding these programs to other areas, and partnering with other groups to kind of knowledge share and provide them in other regions and adapt them.
Yeah, so we did undergo an evaluation of the program. I believe that was last year or the year before.
The year before, yeah.
The year before. And look, some great recommendations came out of that evaluation that we've kind of implemented and look to continue to improve from them. I don't think we've got anything more recent than that, though. However, it's definitely something we can look at in the near future. This funding, the funding for this program will continue to 2027. So we do have some time to be able to do that. And it's definitely something that Wungening prioritizes. We have a great research and evaluation team that provide that type of support across all of our programs. And Louise is part of that one of those teams. I think she's in here at the moment.
I am indeed.
Louise. Yeah, I was just thinking because I read a doc, or it wasn't like a peer-reviewed paper, but it was a commissioned evidence review on supports for homeless young people that was commissioned by the New South Wales government to some of our colleagues at Murdoch Children's. And they were looking at 20 different programs and basically found like there was only a few of them where they had classified as high quality evidence. And sometimes like I think that was involving RCTs, but sometimes just like observational information, and not having the evidence doesn't mean that it's not an effective program. It's just that there's, it's hard to get that evidence, but it's so important to have for, building the case. So I think that would be awesome. So Louise, there you go. Spread the word. But it sounds like there's already some really great stuff being evaluated. So yeah. Great to hear.
And look, I just, I wanted to add, so this ReSet services it's the first time that an ACO has delivered what we would consider a mainstream service. So historically, this sat with previously to us taking over this contract with Outcare, who has huge experience in the justice area, so reintegration specifically. So it's definitely a good point there. We would like to continue to deliver this service for sure.
Lucas.
Thanks, Stuart. First of all, I would like to thank Mauneek and Simone. That was a really interesting presentation, and also commend you for the really important work that you're doing and quite impressive. So my question is about the ReSet program, but could be about the other programs as well, to Mauneek, but Simone, you feel free to jump in as well. When it comes to those few weeks, perhaps, or months in preparation for release, or even that release day program that Mauneek was talking about, what do you think are the needs in terms of healthcare that people are thinking about? So when they're leaving, are they thinking about, for example, problems with having an up-to-date Medicare card, or if they have a mental health diagnosis, for example, are they thinking, especially if that diagnosis was made inside prison, if they're thinking how they can sort of validate that diagnosis with a GP and how that can impact treatment and so on. So just like some thoughts and insights from you, how people are thinking about this and how you're trying to help them with this process as well. Thank you.
And thanks for your question, Lucas. I think that's one of the challenges that we're talking about. We, as service providers, we don't have enough of that information from the prison system. Often we have to push them to give us that kind of information because we want to put in targeted supports in the community. Caseworkers will go out there and ask the clients the questions, but the clients are like, well, I don't have that information on me, because when we're trying to link them up with service providers in the community, they need diagnosis documents, they need the script, they need to know what medication they've been on in the past. But that kind of interlink between the community and the prison is missing, And as service providers, unfortunately, because we don't have access to that kind of information, it's very limited we can do. Linking out to mental health services, there is community mental health services, that we can link them up to. What the prison does is they will put them on a system. They'll refer them. They'll say, well, you've been referred to the Metropolitan Community Mental Health Service. But the community mental health service in Perth will say, well, it's up to the client to come in and engage. The client, in most cases, doesn't have the means to make contact, to attend those fortnightly appointments. Often they're released with 1 week's of script, and they'll say, you know what, here's 1 week, and then for your next script, you need to go see your local GP. A lot of the clients sometimes don't have, they don't know where to find the local GP because they've not done that before. They've been homeless in the past. They're like, we don't know where our local GP is. I've had this experience in the past. I've taken a client to the GP, and the GP said, well, I can't give him that medication because I don't know if he's been on that medication before. Has the prison provided any documents? No, they haven't. So there's a lot of work that I think Department of Justice and Health need to do in terms of more targeted services, especially that through care model, so that it's effective and beneficial for the client. We had an instance where a client was on a wheelchair in the prison. They said, yep, he's on a wheelchair. He'll be released, but he doesn't need a wheelchair when he gets out. Literally, the prison at the gate said, we need our wheelchair back. Thank you. Off you go. And we had to sort of work out what the next plan, and as caseworkers, whatever, what do we know? We had to go to a place to hire a wheelchair for the client. But that kind of communication, and that kind of interlink between the prison and health needs to happen a lot more. NDIS has recently started going into prisons to try and bridge that gap, but we need more of that.
Thank you. And
I
just
hope that answers your questions, Lucas.
Oh, it's really insightful. Thank you. And it's very challenging, as I would imagine. I'm thinking here also that unless there's a very critical health issue to be dealt with at the time of release, people are kind of worrying about housing and other big pressing issues they might have to deal with. And as we all do in our lives at some point, and then realize, oh, now I have to deal with that health problem, and maybe you just don't have the support or just the knowledge about how to go about it.
You're absolutely right. A lot of times health takes a back seat because they're worrying, well, I'm coming up for release, but I don't even have a house yet. I don't know where I'm going to live.
Exactly.
So we're looking at those priorities first, and then health takes a bit of a back seat in that instance. Yeah, you're right.
Understandable. Thanks, Mauneek.
I'll just add, unfortunately, these types of systems, health and NDIS, they're hard for anyone to navigate, really. And if we think about the complexities of, the individuals that we work with, or that are in their prison system, without the right supports, it's nearly impossible to navigate them successfully. And I think it's a huge gap because, if you're, it is a huge gap, and it shouldn't be that hard to get the services that you need, particularly when you're in a prison setting.
Exactly. Thanks, Simone.
Louise, I think you're up.
Thanks. My question is kind of drawing a bit on the answers that you just gave to Lucas, actually. I was thinking about some of the structural constraints that you identified, like the ones you just talked about around information sharing, and but also around the fact that there's so few transition managers for so many people, and what the implications of those sort of staffing decisions are in terms of, say, people who can access the ReSet program or people who are referred to it. And I feel like I was wondering what your thoughts are about if there's, say, research questions that you'd see as a real priority about things like access to services that flow from, structural decisions like that, or if there's things that, say, questions that would be really helpful to have researched that would really help an organisation like Wungening in building the case for, how services would work better, or what sort of structural changes would make for a better service if only you had this, access to this sort of information, or this question was explored better, or there was more evidence.
Yeah, look, I think there's no doubt there is a huge staffing shortage across all prisons in WA at the moment. And like I showed you earlier, the Haycare, for example, 1,100 prisoners for one transition manager. And to see a transition manager, it's not as easy as just walking through the door and going to see a transition manager. It's about putting in a unit interview form. The unit interview form goes to a security officer, then it goes to the transition manager. This could take days. This could take weeks at times. And the transition manager is just one. She's going to look at 1,100 clients who are potentially coming off a release. A lot of them do get missed. A lot of times we get letters directly from prisoners. And the challenging bit for us is we can only take referrals from the transition managers. Unfortunately, ReSet is not a walk-in service. Even though we have a lot of people walking in to Wungening asking for support because they've just been released and not had any support in place, we'll try and navigate them. We'll try and support them as best we can. But for that targeted sort of service and support pre-release, the transition managers, we need investment in that area. You're right. We need most resources in that area, and to identify what the impact is if there isn't one, if there isn't enough of them. Caseworker is a maximum security. They've now expanded the transition manager pool. I think there's about 3 there because of the increasing number of population and the range of clients going to, they have a maximum security. It's a special protection unit there in there as well now. So it's working well because it's more transition managers, and they have specific portfolio. One of the transition managers is looking at disability specific clients. One is looking at specifically Mali unit clients. That works well, and I think that needs to be replicated across all the others, especially the remand prisons like Haiti and Morocco.
Yeah, Louise, for me, one of the questions I would ask, so currently, referrals are based on a number of things. One of them being the individual needs to be at medium to high risk of reoffending. And that's kind of, I guess, they look at their, and sorry, Mauneek, again, correct me if I'm wrong, the types of charges, how many times they may have been in prison previously. But I think it's a bit of a gap because I think it leaves out individuals that historically we know are at high risk of reoffending, and that could be, take the Aboriginal population for example. There, you may have an Aboriginal person who has actually been into prison a few times for a lower or smaller, or what we would consider, not a serious offence, enough obviously for prison time. But if they're not identified as high risk to reoffend, which we know, more than likely they are, they probably won't, we wouldn't receive a referral for them to access ReSet services because they've kind of missed out on that criteria to be considered medium to high risk. Would you agree, Mauneek, or?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And the model has slightly shifted. When ReSet or when Outcare operated, they didn't need the transition manager referrals. They had access to the TOMs. They would just be given a list of everyone that's being released 6 months within the 6-month period. So they would just go and see everyone. Whereas when the new contracts were awarded, they put in the transition manager sort of link between people that they need to be referred to the transition managers. And that kind of restricts the number of people we get because it has to come through the transition managers.
So I guess research-wise, Louise, why? Why, if we can show that there's actually a large population that would benefit from the services we provide, but they're missing out for, reasons outside of their control. If that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
I'll take advantage of as chair to ask if I could be cheeky, kind of a two-part question. The first part you were talking about and I've always been struck by this apparent mismatch between the through care services offered and who needs it, and this idea that the funding is delivered on the basis of perceived risk and not on the basis of perceived need. And I appreciate that those two things overlap, and I'm wondering if you can reflect on how much they overlap and how much, in your view, there's a mismatch. And it's a researchable question. But and if the second part of that question, if I can throw you a question that'll take hours to answer, is, you guys have clearly been working in this space and innovating and doing great things across this sector as much as you can. If you were suddenly, Simone or Mauneek, if you were the Premier and you could wave a magic wand, what would be your optimal through care service for people getting out of prisons in Western Australia? I mean, do you have a sense of, if you could just kind of make it all happen, what you would like to see happen?
Yeah, thanks for your question there, Stuart. Look, I'll try and answer the first one first. I think everyone that enters prison, the issue at the moment is all the reintegration services start or are activated 6 months pre-release, whereas I think they should be activated a lot sooner. I think reintegration needs to start the moment people enter the prison, and the moment they have a sentence and identify what their needs are. Start working with them as soon as they enter prison, because then you will identify and work and provide those treatment needs for while they're still in custody. And that flows through in the community as well. And I think that's missing right now, because every integration service only comes into play 6 months pre-release. There's a huge gap of people on remand. There's not a lot of people on remand. There's no services out there. They need a lot of services. The number of people that walk into Wungening asking for support because they've just been released and they were sitting in prison for 12 months remand, and then they had a backdated sentence and they were released without any supports. So that's where the need is, even though the contract says it's sentence, but the need here is in everyone that goes into prison. So a huge gap there. I think the focus for justice is sentence. Once they're sentenced, then what other supports are we providing in place? Because until then, they're sentenced, I suppose, until they're found guilty, they're not guilty. It's like we can't put treatment needs in place until there is an outcome of court. So that needs to change. I think there needs to be more targeted support for people that are still sitting there in remand as well. The second part of your question, it's a big one, and obviously needs like I said, you say you could sit here for days at end trying to think of that answer. But I think there's more collaboration, to be honest. I think if there is a lot that can be done if departments just collaborate. Department of Health, mental health, justice, communities, housing, just collaborate, because there's a lot of solutions can come through collaboration. A lot of barriers have also come because of lack of collaboration. Department of Community doesn't want to talk to Department of Justice. Department of Justice doesn't want to talk to Department of Health. And I think if I was a premier, I'd be like, bring it all together. Let's have just one sort of, when they're in prison, it's the perfect opportunity to try and link them up with all those services, because you've got a captive audience. They're in there, they're listening. So that is a perfect opportunity to link up with all the services. When they come out, it's they have those connections already established. So yeah, that's what I would think of.
Great answer.
I was thinking exactly the same thing. So I just thought that Hayley was thinking what I was thinking.
Yeah.
For me, mine's probably in an ideal world. I would probably focus more on justice reinvestment, like investing in the preventative before they get to prison. I mean, I think there's such a a huge difference that could be made with addressing the underlying social determinants, so the reasons why individuals are ending up in prison. So yeah, for me, I would probably focus more on the justice reinvestment side of things.